is up? Bienvenue sur le podcast Conversation Awesome avec KarmaKin. Mon nom est Claudia et ma mission avec ce podcast est de t'amener dans un monde d'inspiration, de découverte et d'apprentissage. À travers des épisodes solo ou avec invités, en français and in English, attends-toi à une panoplie de sujets et d'histoires variées en lien avec la santé, les habitudes de vie, le développement personnel et spirituel et tout ce qui peut t'aider à vivre une vie awesome, épanouie selon tes termes. I am honored and so grateful that you're here. Merci de partager le podcast en grand nombre, de t'y abonner et de laisser 5 étoiles et un review sur ta plateforme d'écoute préférée. Alright, let's dive in dans la nouvelle conversation de la semaine et merci encore d'être à l'écoute. You're awesome! What is up, beautiful souls? J'espère que vous allez bien, que vous êtes en pleine forme. Bienvenue dans cette conversation awesome. Ouais, toute une conversation awesome cette semaine. Si tu as lu le titre et la description, tu te dis peut-être « Oh, ouais, Claudia, elle va jaser de dating sur son podcast. » Ouais, it's happening, ladies. On est là, on jase de ça aujourd'hui. Mais avant de vous laisser plonger dans la conversation que j'ai eue avec je vais dire two puis deux en même temps, mais my two beautiful soul sisters, Sara Fennell Greer, je vais vous donner un petit peu de contexte, OK? Bon, si t'es nouvelle sur le podcast, ça fait pas longtemps que tu me suis, tu le sais peut-être pas, mais la sphère relation romantique, amoureuse, intime de ma vie, c'est quelque chose que je garde pas mal privé. C'est pas quelque chose que je parle comme ça ouvertement, même pas à ma famille, genre. Il y a comme... Je peux compter sur une main, 5 doigts, max, les gens qui sont habituellement au courant de ce qui se passe dans ma vie romantique au niveau de « je vois-tu quelqu'un? Je suis-tu en couple? J'ai-tu un petit ami santé? Am I dating? » Blablabla. C'est vraiment une sphère que j'ai toujours gardée pour moi. Et dans les cérémonies que j'ai faites, les thérapies que j'ai suivies, le coaching que j'ai reçu, j'ai dû et je continue de faire énormément de cheminement et de healing par rapport à cette sphère-là de ma vie. Fait que le but d'aujourd'hui, c'est certainement pas de rentrer dans des choses ultra personnelles que je veux encore garder pour moi, mais c'est de vous présenter cette conversation-là que j'ai eue la semaine passée avec Sara Fennell Greer quand j'étais en visite à Toronto, aux alentours de Toronto, pour faire ma tournée de ce que j'appelle mon soul tribe, my soul family. Je vais les voir à peu près 3 mois, puis je fais vraiment la tournée, j'essaie de faire une petite visite, là, puis on se fait des soupers, puis on se ramasse ensemble, puis on a toujours des conversations, honnêtement, là, qui me ground tellement quand je conduis le 4-5 heures pour revenir chez moi à la fin d'un long week-end passé dans le GTA, je suis toujours super reconnaissante. J'ai l'impression que ma batterie, elle s'est rechargée complètement. J'ai comme plus de clarté aussi grâce aux conversations qu'on a eues, grâce à ce safe space-là qu'on s'offre mutuellement, tu sais. Puis, quand je suis arrivée vendredi chez Sara, Greer était déjà là. Et encore une fois, mise en contexte, Sara a été sur le podcast, donc épisode 4 et épisode 100. Je parle souvent d'elle, ça a été mon coach pendant plusieurs années, c'est devenu une de mes amies les plus proches. Et Greer, ça fait pas longtemps que je la connais, on en parle d'ailleurs sur la conversation d'aujourd'hui, mais elle aussi, on a connecté super rapidement, puis on se partage des choses genre vraiment personnelles et profondes. Puis Greer a été sur le podcast aussi, l'épisode 138, je crois, où est-ce qu'on avait parlé de perfectionniste. Et moi, j'ai été sur le podcast de Sara plusieurs fois, et Greer est rendu co-host sur le podcast à Sara. Fait que bref, Sara se dit « Hey, ça serait cool si on enregistre une conversation, les 3 ensemble. » Fait qu'évidemment, on est super enchantés de ça. Fait que littéralement, là, je débarque vendredi après comme 5 heures, 5 heures et demie de route. J'arrive chez Sara. On est super contente de se voir. On se donne un gros câlin. On est comme « OK, let's go. » On plug nos micros. On fait la conversation tout de suite parce que ça va nous donner le temps aussi de catch-up, tu sais, puis de, jaser de ce sujet-là que Sara nous propose. Elle est comme « Hey, les filles, ça pourrait être intéressant de parler de c'est quoi, genre, dater, tu sais, quand t'es une personne, une femme qui est éveillée, qui est ambitieuse, qui est entière, qui est spirituelle, qui est entrepreneur ou peu importe, tu sais, comme ça se passe comment quand t'es dans ces vibes-là, dans ta trentaine? Parce que, Sarah est en relation sérieuse avec Joe depuis, mon Dieu, 8 ans, eux autres. Mais moi puis Greer, c'est ça. En ce moment, on est célibataire, puis c'est un sujet qu'on se parle quand même assez régulièrement. Fait que bref, we did it! We did it, puis on a eu vraiment du fun. Sarah a déjà publié l'épisode sur son podcast à elle, puis j'ai dit, check, envoie-moi l'enregistrement. Je vais la mettre sur mon podcast aussi, même si effectivement, c'est pas un sujet que je parle souvent. Mais en ce moment, là, que tu sois en train de dater, que tu sois célibataire, que tu sois dans un couple ouvert, que tu sois dans un committed relationship en couple marié depuis longtemps, bref, peu importe c'est quoi ton étiquette dans ce monde-là de relations intimes, sexuelles, romantiques, etc. Mais je suis sûre que tu vas pouvoir, rire avec nous parce qu'on a du fun quand même dans la conversation. Mais aussi, tu vas pouvoir avoir peut-être des petites réflexions, des changements de mindset parce que effectivement, les trois, on partage notre point de vue qui est différent. Moi, je partage, le fait que, en revenant de voyage, avec tout ce que j'ai vécu dans le passé, ce que j'ai réalisé pendant ce long voyage-là, que, j'étais peut-être prête, à vraiment m'ouvrir pour de vrai, puis pas à moitié, à peut-être avoir un partenaire dans ma vie, mais ça ressemble à quoi selon mes termes, puis utiliser ça comme espèce de terrain de jeu pour voir j'en suis où avec, justement, des blessures, des doutes, des peurs, etc. Puis c'est des choses que tu peux réfléchir dans toutes les sphères de ta vie, tu sais. Après, on parle aussi de, Sara, qui, elle, est dans une relation sérieuse, conscious, awesome, avec Joe depuis longtemps. Ça ressemble à quoi? Tu sais, comment tu développes un attachement qui est sécure avec ton partenaire, mais aussi qui est sécure avec toi. Puis on rentre là-dedans un peu les amitiés. Tu sais, Greer, ça a été vraiment, après avoir laissé une relation hyper toxique, il y a de ça un petit peu moins de 2 ans, c'est de se retrouver soi-même, de développer la relation avec soi-même, de avoir des relations sécures avec des amitiés en premier. Fait que, tu sais, tout ça pour dire que l'épisode d'aujourd'hui, je suis pas en train de vous raconter mon dating life depuis que j'ai 12 ans, là. Vraiment pas. Oui, je partage des choses que, effectivement, habituellement, je garde pour moi, mais dans une ambiance de 3 girlfriends qui sont assises autour de la table puis qui discutent ensemble avec des super belles leçons, des belles réalisations, des bons conseils et quelques rires, évidemment. Donc, imagine que toi, t'es comme une mouche sur le mur, là, puis tu nous écoutes, tu sais, dans cette conversation-là. Fait que, voilà, j'en dis pas plus. La conversation est en anglais, évidemment, puisque Sara Greer parle pas français. Mais ça me ferait super plaisir d'avoir votre feedback. Si t'as appris une chose ou deux sur moi, s'il y a des choses qui t'ont fait réaliser des trucs par rapport à tes propres relations, encore une fois, que tu sois marié, célibataire, couple ouvert, name it, whatever, partage ça avec moi. Puis, who knows? Peut-être que le topic des relations puis de tout ça va être peut-être un peu plus fréquent là, dans mon contenu. Mais c'est sûr que je me garde un jardin secret et des choses que je dirais pas, surtout pas à micro ouvert, mais que je vais garder pour moi et mes amis très, très, très proches par choix personnel et par boundaries personnelles. Donc voilà, sans plus tarder, je vous laisse à notre conversation puis j'ai bien hâte d'avoir votre feedback.
Claudia, welcome back to the show.
I'm happy to be here.
Yes, you've been on the show. Have you been on solo by yourself before?
Yeah, twice.
Yeah, we did the Life Chat series last year in 2022. We had 4 episodes.
Yep.
You were on with Emma and myself when I was visiting you in the Montreal area.
Yep.
And now you just actually drove 5.5 hours.
Just got here.
Yeah, and you're here in the GTA. We are live here in person, and Greer is with us as well.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm also here.
Yes, and you've been on Claudia's podcast.
Yeah, our episode dropped pretty recently, actually.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I actually loved your episode. I listened to that all around perfectionism.
Yep. It was a great episode. And you've been on my podcast, Sarah, too. Actually, the only guest with Bharat that's been on twice. So when I launched it, and then to celebrate my 100th episode last year. So.
Yes, we were on talking about my book.
Yes, we were.
Yeah, and now here we are all 3 of us together.
I know. What a full circle moment.
Or like triangle, because we're 3.
Yeah, a full triangle moment.
Oh, Claudia, so we, last time you were on, we were on your Life Chat series, just talking about growth in general, like your full growth journey. And I've witnessed you step into a different level of growth than what I've ever seen in you before. And it's interesting, being in these circles of us all growing and evolving, there's something that you actually sense and see and watch in patterns of languaging and behavior when a close friend of yours doesn't make the same decisions anymore, the behaviors change, and it's like, and I've said to you so many times, I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm so proud of you. Like, you're doing it.
I'm doing it.
You're doing it.
We're all doing it.
Yeah.
And so you actually spent most of, the first quarter of this year traveling, and last fall traveling as well. And you hadn't been away for that long, since COVID hit. We were all grounded for quite some time. So I'd love for you just to share your traveling journey and what that was like to actually be free and,
Yay.
I was going to say on the road again, but maybe in the sky again.
Oh man, boats, planes, trains, all of it. So I spent the fall of 2022 in Europe, and then I came home for the holidays, and then I spent the winter in Latin America, so Colombia mostly, and then a couple of weeks in Costa Rica. So it was about 8 months of being back on the road in my nomad life, which I've done in the past. But yeah, like you mentioned, during COVID, I just stayed home and worked on the business, and it was great. But before my trip, I went through this, 4 months, like dark night of the soul and just like a hero's journey with a smile on my face, because I knew that something awesome was going to come out of it. And it ended up being, this 8-month traveling, being free, connecting to my values again, which are like, minimalistic lifestyle, freedom, packing up and just leaving, doing whatever I want. Took quite a step back from my business in the fall while I was in Europe. I went to see some friends I hadn't seen in forever, discovered so many beautiful places, met some new friends, and I just worked maybe like 8 to 10 hours a week. So that was huge for me to be like, okay, this is not a year where I'll be growing the business. I'm going to be stepping back and I'm going to keep my one-on-one clients. I'm not going to be launching anything. And it's really okay if I don't make as much money as 2021 and 2020, which was also a sign of growth, because past Claudia would have been like, well, no, success as an entrepreneur, you got to make more and always be grinding and growing the business. So I had so much fun, like so many awesome stories and good memories. And because I love the sun and the heat, I was like, I'm still going to keep traveling for the winter. So I went back to Colombia, and we were talking about full circle. I had the epiphany of KarmaKin. I think I mentioned that on the live chat series in 2016. I was on the beach in Colombia and got hit by this universe down low, like I'm going to start an online business and it's going to be called KarmaKin. So I went back to that exact same spot on that exact same beach.
That's so cool.
Yeah, almost like 7 years after, just reliving that moment. I was like, wow, like look at my business now, like 7 years later. And then in 2017, when I went back to Colombia the second time, that's when my app was like live. That's when my website, got like available, quote unquote, to the public. So again, just like full circle and just appreciating, the last few years. So yeah, I had a great time. Went back fully, like launching a challenge while I was in Colombia, which was great. I did a free challenge, like a 7-day free challenge. And it was called the Dream Life Challenge. It was like, I'm living my dream life right now.
Like living it.
In Colombia.
And you had a pretty awesome launch.
Oh, yeah. I was just so aligned. Like, it was so easy.
You imagine you're like, it's so easy.
Yeah. And it was I think it was my first launch where I could say that it was perfectly balanced between the feminine and masculine energy, because I was in my divine aligned masculine energy for the launch and like doing all the things, but I was loving it. So it was a lot of work and a lot of time on that launch. But then I would go to the beach and go out and go dancing and just free flow for the rest of my day because I was living on the beach in Colombia. So so that was great. And then I went to Costa Rica. It was my second time in Costa Rica. I met with a good friend who's also a shaman. We did a ayahuasca ceremony. We could talk about that for 10 hours, and that's not the purpose of this podcast. But then I came home at the end of March after that experience.
Mm-hmm. And of course, this was all before I had met you.
I know, right? I feel like I've known you for 10 years.
I know.
10 lifetimes.
It's shocking to me that like how recently you and I have met.
Yeah, that was just like back in May.
Yeah. I know. And also a lifetime ago.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Like, we got our soul tribe, right? And, Emma and Alex aren't here, but you meet girlfriends and it's just like, I've known you forever. And you can just pick up conversation and talk for hours.
For sure. Great. You know more about my life and like some really deep personal stuff. And like something pretty big happened in my personal life like last week. And like you, Sarah, and Emma are like the first 3 women. I was like, I'm just going to reach out to them and share with them what happened, So grateful for that, that safe space, to be there for each other and share all the goods and the challenges.
It's been like life-changing for me.
Good. So you did an ayahuasca ceremony, and I know it wasn't just that, but there was a lot of revelations coming back from traveling.
Yeah.
What would you say your biggest revelation was?
Yeah. The biggest thing was that I hadn't realized I was this exhausted from doing everything alone and by myself.
Yeah.
I take a lot of pride in like, quote unquote, how far I've come, being only 32 and, all my travels and growing a business by myself, living by myself, traveling by myself, And I was shown in ayahuasca ceremony that like, yes, during this lifetime, but also previous lifetime. So my soul has been doing a lot of like solo work for a while. And even though I have great healthy habits and I have a lot of quote unquote energy, I still felt very exhausted. So when I came home, one of my first and biggest intention was like, I'm done doing everything by myself. And I don't know what that's going to look like. And I just asked the universe, like, okay, business-wise, just show me ways where I can collaborate, create partnerships, not build everything from scratch anymore. And like so many beautiful people just like fell, in my LinkedIn inbox and like on Instagram or like at a networking event. And I've been creating a lot of things with different entrepreneurs and the other people in the wellness field. So that's been great. And then the other area that's always been a bit of a challenge for me was obviously like the dating and like being open to have a partner, like a man that could share the travels and the goals and just life with me, which is, a whole different level of openness and being ready to receive. And there's still so much healing that had to be done there. So yeah, that was my main revelation and intention when I got back.
Yeah. I've been having a lot of conversations with both of you who are both single. Joe and I are going on 8 years together. And, the main conversations that I've been having with you guys and that you guys have been having with me is around like after you wake up and you're growing and you're evolving and you see so much and you see toxic patterns and you can just see red flags right away, or you're actually aware of like your role in past relationships and things that went wrong there. How do you get out and date? And that's been kind of the topic of conversation so often, because I also hear from other people that it can sometimes be difficult to be out there and dating when there is so much awareness. And so how are you guys navigating that?
Greer.
We just look at each other. I think it's different. Like Claudia and I are at very different places. I know that for me, I'm probably still in that contemplation phase. I have not been on a date. I am not on dating apps. And I think after my last relationship ended, like there was just no way. There was no way I was going to be letting anyone anywhere near me. I needed to, figure out where reality was. I needed to learn how to trust again, especially in myself and in my choice in partner. And it has taken me almost 2 years to just get to the point where I am open to even having the conversation. Like I really didn't even want to talk about this. I mean, obviously I'm here on the podcast. I wanted to do this podcast, but before, talking to Claudia, talking to Sara, that wasn't even a conversation I wanted to have. I was like, I am safe when I am alone and I can control things and no one can hurt me again. But also realizing that my long-term goals of like, I do want to share my life with someone and I do want to have a family. So how I'm living right now isn't necessarily aligned with those long-term goals, and working to bridge that gap. And honestly, my conversations with both of you ladies have been so helpful. Claudia too, because you have shared so many stories of like actually going on a date and actually going on apps, which again is, I'm not there, but maybe one day I will be. And just having someone I can talk to and seeing someone else kind of be like a role model to go through and like, hey, I've gone through something similar. I'm going out there. I'm putting myself out there. I'm meeting these new people and it's not the end of the world. Like I can be observant. I can see who is aligned with me, who is not. And just being, watchful and enjoying the experience, maybe.
Yeah, I see, not as someone who is single, but I can see it as being such a great training ground to be getting out dating, to actually put all of your quote unquote work to work, to use. And so, Claudia, I know you have been out there and you have been dating and you are on dating apps. And so, more specifically, through the summer, getting started with all that. And so what has that been?
Yeah, it's like, that's exactly it. Like, it's just been a training ground for me. So I've always had a lot of resistance when it comes to dating apps, because I'm such an energetic person. Like, I'll see somebody 100 meters away and I'll feel it right away. I can't explain it. That's just how I am. So I was like, to me, it did not make sense in my brain that you would go on an app and then you would pick somebody that could potentially be your partner, or even somebody that you get close with, based on a couple photos and a few lines and
blurb.
a photo of them with their fish or their dog, So I've always had a lot of resistance because for me, I was like, well, it has to be natural and it's just going to happen,
Yeah, sorry, not to cut you off, but again, I also have that same resistance. I want that meet cute. I want the natural, the universe just dumped someone in front of me. I didn't have to do anything. And now we're together and it's great. So I really, really relate to that.
Yeah. So I really had to shift my mindset and shift my intention. Why am I signing up to this dating app? So I legit had a conversation with the universe. And I was like, okay, I am signing up on this dating app because I want to see where I'm at. Mm-hmm. I want to see the thoughts that I still have, the fears that I still have around dating, if my trust issues are still there, am I really open, or this is just a story that I'm telling myself because I'm obviously tired of being alone, So, and I was like, universe, I'm moving, I'm doing the work on myself. So I'm not signing up on the app with the intention of meeting, quote unquote, the one, or meeting, my partner. But because I'm doing that, I'm showing you that I'm actually ready. So if by chance I could meet someone naturally at the gym or at a networking event, that would be amazing. So that was my intention. And it was so amazing to just observe myself, especially the first few weeks. I think it was 2 weeks before I actually liked somebody back. And because of all the work I've been doing, and we all know about the observer seat and just observing and being aware that you're aware and just watching yourself, I was like, oh, look at you. You think that by liking somebody back, that means that he's going to be your husband, in the future. First step, just start a conversation. Actually, you don't even have to start a conversation. You can just match with someone. So I would give myself little goals, oh, this week actually match with somebody. And then next week, let's start a conversation. But that took weeks. And I was laughing at myself. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. And that was my biggest thing too.
No, but I remember you telling me that. And that was that was an epiphany moment for me. I'm like, oh yeah, things do progress quite slowly sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's not like you go on one date with someone and then you project yourself walking down the aisle with them. It's like, hey, on this 1 hour interaction, I'm going to paint the rest of my life with this person and see what it looks like. No, you can actually just have a 1 hour conversation and it be a 1 hour conversation.
Exactly.
You can actually just like another person back, and it doesn't mean that you are risking life and limb in the process.
Yeah. And it's interesting because my other pattern now it sounds like it's the complete opposite. I used to find all the reasons why this guy was not suitable for a date. All the reasons or the excuses why I wouldn't even open myself up to this guy or go on a date, right? Oh, he doesn't fit this criteria, then no. He doesn't have this, blah, blah, blah. Or that one photo. But that's just a defense mechanism.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So it was cool to see myself go from one extreme to the other and okay, what's the middle ground? So there was a date and I was like, oh, the guy is short. And then I could just watch all the stories while people think, again, you project your own shit on other people. Yeah. People think, my family and my friends, they think that I'm going to end up with this tall, muscular guy, obviously, because Claudia works out. But what are you going to say if I end up with a guy who's shorter? And then just watching this, you're I really don't need this story. And it's just not true. You know, like, why would I say no to a potential date if he's calm, he's nice, we have a great conversation, just because he's short and people expect me to be with like a, you know, taller, more muscular man. So there was a lot of stories that, you know, I just had to prove to myself that they were not real anymore, and they were just programs and just stories. So that was cool to kind of like, this one, nope, not serving me anymore. And this one, nope, that's just a projection. Yeah. So it was a great training ground, a great training ground.
I think that's a perfect example of, you know, being in the observer seat and like witnessing the story and then choosing not to
engage.
You know, we did a whole podcast on the kind of our perception of the different levels of self-awareness and how to take self-awareness into actual practicality. And I think that's a great example of that, where like you see the story, you're like, why do I even think like this? And you start to question and you start to laugh at yourself. And I think when you create that distance between the voice and what it's saying and like the actual reality, that's when you can actually shift.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And there was another story. So I'm 32 and I got ghosted for the first time in my life. And that was like a highlight of my summer.
We were away with our other friend, Emma. We were away and you were talking to this guy.
I know.
Like, and then
everything was going so well.
It was. And again, just observing myself, I'm like, wow, like this is the first time in a long time, like since my ex, that I could see this going somewhere. I was like, oh, there's no red flags. Mm-hmm. There's no, you know, reasons or excuses for me to run away. This is actually very calm and grounded and like fun and simple. And like we saw each other like a few times and like, you know, everything was going good.
Yeah.
And then
all of a sudden.
I don't get ghosting.
I still don't get it.
No. And like my head, because, you know, you and I talked through this, you kind of go to like, well, are they okay? Did they die? Did something happen? And like, that's where my mind would go right away.
Yeah.
As opposed to just like ghost, like how immature is ghosting?
I was like, we're in our 30s, dude. Like
come
grow
on.
some balls and like, like tell me, you know, like if, and I've said that too to some guy, like, look, this was a great date, or after like texting back and forth, like you just say it, you know, like we as humans, we like closure. We like to know what to expect. So it was really interesting. But again, to watch myself not going to like, oh, I did something wrong.
This means something about me.
Exactly. Yes. I didn't go there at all, which was great. Like it showed me like, okay, I have like the self-esteem and the confidence in myself to not abandon myself again in a relationship. And it's like, cool, like, thank you. Grateful for this guy. You ghosted me, but, you know, you were the first one in a while that I could see a potential. So, again, right, just observing which side you want to go with, which story you want to bring into your dating, you know, shenanigans. Yeah. But, so that was interesting.
I think for me, there were a few, like, really key things that you said that helped me shift my perspective on things. And one was, again, just because you go on a dating app, just because you like someone back, just because you go on one date doesn't mean that the rest of your life is now bound to this person. Like that puts a lot of pressure on you to make a good decision on very little information. Yeah. The other one was, as you said, like letting go of stories and focusing more on how you felt around this person than being so preoccupied of, does this person like me? And how do I get them to like me? It's, well, do I like this person? And do I like how I feel and who I am around this person? And those were two very, very big, you know, pieces of advice that you didn't really say directly to me, but you said them to me. And I was like, oh, that was impactful.
Yeah. And that was a revelation for me too, because, you know, consciously or subconsciously, we kind of have a list. Right? Like, I want the guy to be to look a certain way and stuff. And I just got rid of the list because I have met guys who check all the boxes on that list, but the energy and how I was feeling with them, that's just not how I want to feel on a day-to-day basis. And then I would meet other guys that like, I was like, oh wow, like for me, calm and grounded, like that's my home base. So I don't want to be with a partner who doesn't allow me to remain in that very calm and grounded energy. So that was a revelation for me too. I was like, wow, actually at this stage of my life, how I'm feeling is way more important than if the guy travels or works out. And again, dating at a quote unquote later stage. I mean, I'm still young, but like, I feel like I've lived 200 lifetimes already. But in that stage of like growth and like awakening and stuff, like I'm whole. I'm not looking for my other half.
Yeah.
You know?
That's huge.
So, I mean, would I like a man who's spiritual? Absolutely. But I already have my spiritual soul tribe with who I can have these conversations and do ceremonies. Would I like a man who works out and is active? Oh, absolutely. But I already work out, you know?
Yeah.
Like I don't need somebody to complete me, or like I'm not
be you.
To be me,
Yeah.
right? Would I love a man who travels? For sure. But even if he doesn't, I'm still gonna go travel because that's one of my values and that's part of me. So that was cool as well to see like I'm whole. I want somebody to amplify my life, and I'm in a stage of my life where I'm open to having somebody, you know, come along the ride and be side by side and not be like all intertwined. And so, yeah.
I think it's so important to enter into this not with desperation and like a scarcity mindset, which of course you're doing the opposite, which is awesome, because I think when we do that, it's like your standards tend to fall by the wayside. Your trust in yourself tends to fall by the wayside because you're like, oh, I'm running out of time, or there aren't that many good guys out there, or I could be alone for the rest of my life.
Or it's fertile ground for codependency and like, you know, abandoning yourself.
And overlooking things that we otherwise wouldn't overlook.
The red flags.
The red
I've also seen, even like what you were talking about there, with asking, you know, how does this person make me feel? I kind of like had this download as you were talking of like, after you kind of like awaken and grow and like truly get to know yourself, it's almost like there's an advanced level of like what red flags are for you. Obviously there's the typical, you know, toxicity and narcissism and all that stuff of red flags. But when you know yourself and you really know what you're looking for, and especially how they make you feel, that definition of red flags can really just be broadened out into different areas for yourself of what is a red flag for you, and not just like what a typical red flag would be called.
Yeah. And that's like your grounding and like your anchors almost, because I still have these thoughts like, am I just going to be single for the rest of my life? And like, am I worthy of love? And like, why is this area a little harder for me, you know, compared to like the travels and the business? So I listen to the voice, I don't engage with it, right? But when you know yourself and you can trust that, okay, is this a red flag? Is this like a wound? Is this like my inner child? Like which part of myself is saying these things? And yeah, when you know yourself, you can go back to that whole self and that higher self and that part of you that knows what's best, and that comes from pure love, you know, and again, what's best for you and not from the ego or the fears or the wounds. So that's helpful to, yes, notice the red flags, but also like, oh, am I just creating a red flag because I'm scared, I want to run away because I'm catching feelings?
Yeah,
or is it like an actual thing that I need to consider, you know?
Yeah, it's a huge protective mechanism. I know, Sarah, I was saying to you that I'm like, I find no one attractive. I just, and me saying like, I don't know if that's just me trying to protect myself. Like if I'm still being very guarded. I mean, obviously I am at this point, right? Like I'm not putting myself out there, but I am open. That's progress for me. And I think I get in my head in terms of like, oh my goodness, I've been single for however long. Should I be going out there? Like, should I have healed faster? Like, is this just taking me too long?
Yeah. It's like you get into your head too much sometimes.
Absolutely.
Too. And especially, I mean, with your situation, there was a huge breach of trust. There was, you know, the rug pulled out from underneath of you with that last relationship. And you even mentioned earlier about like trusting yourself to choose someone. And I think that can be said for a lot of people getting back out on the market, whether you were in a highly toxic relationship or you've just been in relationships that just never work out. It's kind of like, well, what am I doing wrong here? Like, why do I keep choosing this type of person or relationships that don't keep working out? And so, Greer, where do you feel like you're at with that trust in yourself?
It's better. It's a lot better. And I'm able to actually show up in like my friendships authentically me. Like I was going to say, like having these friendships has allowed me to see what healthy relationships look like and how I actually want to be treated by, you know, people in my life. And sort of, I think my tolerance for bad behavior was a little bit too high, and sort of, you know, moving that to a place where it's like, okay, I can still have compassion for someone and I can still forgive them for what they did, but I don't have to tolerate that in my life. And of course, the relationships I have with you, with, you know, our other girlfriends, they're just so incredible that I'm like, well, now I kind of know that the standard is high. Like for any guy,
the bar really high.
Any guy out there listening to this,
but you deserve nothing less.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, and like I say the same to you all the time. I'm like, just because you haven't found someone or you've maybe been dating for a while and been single for a while, don't lower your standards just to not be single. Like, and for me, it's really been this focus of how do I, on my own, make my life as full as possible. Like Claudia, you're talking about all your travels. Like that's the goal. Like I am whole and I am complete and I'm living a life that I love. And if there's someone out there who wants to join me, awesome. If not, I'm going to keep doing me. Yeah. And it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did a deep dive in the sisterhood recently all around attachment styles.
Blew my mind.
I'd love to talk about that. And I mean, a secure attachment style is really what you're looking for in a relationship. And both of you have been talking about that one characteristic of that, which is being whole within yourself and really just looking for someone to walk alongside with and have like that team partner aspect of a relationship, not needing someone to fill a void or make you whole or, you know, all those codependency type of qualities. And so, Claudia, if you don't mind me.
Oh, I can share.
I'm like, do we have to talk about this? Because I'm the same.
I know. So Sarah texted me and she's like, oh, you know, we're doing the deep dive tomorrow. Like, I feel you're really going to resonate and like enjoy the topic and stuff. So I watched you ladies on the replay. I'm doing the quiz and then I send her a screenshot. You know, I was like, yeah, definitely avoidant. But it's funny because as I was listening to the deep dive and like reading through like the different characteristics of the different ones, I could see a lot of like anxious behaviors when I was with my ex, because I felt like, oh, I finally met you. I've been single most of my life. I've met you. You're the one. We have the same vision. And like, I fell in love with this vision of us, you know, traveling and like having businesses and blah, blah, blah. So let me hold on to you forever and like text you all the time and try to save you and pay for everything, because what if you leave me? So it was a lot of that anxious, you know, type of relationship or attachment in that relationship. But then outside of that specific relationship, yeah, everything else was mainly avoidant. And again, it's just fear of being hurt, right?
Yeah,
and fear of, for me, it's a lot of like, there's some beliefs around I'm going to lose XYZ if I'm in a relationship. And I'm really trying to work on that, but like, I'm going to lose my freedom. I'm going to lose my, you know, the freedom to travel. I'm going to have to like meet the other person halfway or do like, yeah, but there's just that belief that's there. So I'm trying to really work on that. I'm like, no, like the person's going to amplify and not take away from. Yeah. So that's why like just avoiding feels safer.
So I'm the odd one out here. I am an anxiously attached partner. But of course, as I'm talking, I'm displaying avoidance in my behaviors. That doesn't mean that my attachment style is avoidant, because obviously when I am with my primary attachment figure, I do lean towards that. So one of the things I know about attachment is that we can bring different attachment styles to different relationships that we have. Obviously, all of us here, we're in a very secure relationship, but we are also not necessarily each other's primary attachment figures. So as I said, like friendships have been super healing for me, because I can go, oh, if I can be secure in this relationship and I can have secure behaviors and have secure behaviors modeled back to me, I know I can bring that into a future relationship of mine. And obviously being very aware of what someone else's attachment style is as well. I know that dating avoidance, as much as I have tried, has not worked for me in the past. And so being on the lookout again for, how does it feel? Do I feel like I'm on a roller coaster ride? Do I feel like my attachment system is just on fire? And to not equate that with love and equate that with, this person is triggering my attachment system. It's probably not going to work very well, or it's going to be hard, and they will have to be very aware. Like both parties will have to be very aware to mitigate those tendencies. So when you do meet someone and you're like, oh man, I think they're kind of boring, you're probably looking at someone with a secure attachment style. And that's why I said, like, prioritizing how you feel around someone versus a story or a checklist, and actually looking for, hey, do I feel calm? Do I feel grounded? Because if ever you're sitting across from someone and you do feel like anxious or anything like that, okay, that whatever it tells you, that's information that you can use going forward. And now knowing and having done all this work, I can actually interpret that data and make smart decisions on it.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Sara, you were avoidant before, like you mentioned. You really resonated with that style of attachment. And now you're like in a secure relationship. What are some of the key things that you healed or that, you worked on to get from avoidant to secure?
That's a huge... And so FYI, I didn't realize I was doing that work. I think it just kind of came with when you're Joe and I going on 8 years, like what I mentioned, the growth we've had to heal our attachment styles in order for that growth of the relationship. And so me being the avoidant one, where kind of like what you were saying of like afraid to lose my space, or like when we had the kids, like it felt so crowded in the house and I'm like, I just need my office and like, this is my space and this is where my stuff is. Also can emotionally close down really easily, can push people away, doesn't want to have those deep conversations. Whereas Joe was on the anxious side. And so if you don't know, usually you attract your opposite. And so anxious attachment style will attract the avoidant. And so the anxious is, they can come across more as like needy, where like they want to talk about things, or they'll be texting you all the time and they're trying to just always kind of have their claws in you. Is kind of how I
claws? No, we're just super bonders, and we do not fear closeness.
Yeah. And so whenever Joe and I would have conflict, like he would just want to sit there and like talk about it forever, and I'm like, get me like out of this.
avoid.
Yeah, this is too much intimacy.
And so some of the things that we healed, I can't think of like anything really specific, and maybe this is specific, but like communication patterns. And I have heard time and time again, the key to a good relationship is good communication, especially like if you live with someone, you spend their life with them, like we run a business together, like when there's not communication, there's just so much void. And then there's so much left to interpretation of like, what are they thinking? Or like, I'm just going to project my thoughts onto that situation versus really seeing like his perspective and what he's going through. And so the hard conversations and even just voicing out how you're feeling. So now like in hard conversations, especially like I'm known to shut down, like my mind will go blank and like, I don't know what to say because conflict kind of startles me like that. Or maybe it's the avoidant tendency of just not wanting to talk about it. So emotionally shutting down is just to communicate. So sometimes when there's a hard conversation, I'll just flat out say like, I don't know what to say right now. Like I'm feeling very like hot in my body. Like I really don't want to be sitting here like talking, like I'm feeling really uncomfortable. And so just voicing like your experience of what you're going through, or like the lens of perception. And so if something rubs me the wrong way, or I might think that there's something like bothering him, I'll just flat out like, like, hey, like what's going through your mind right now? Or this is the story I'm telling myself about this situation. Like, what's your perspective or what are you thinking about? And so that has been game changer. Or even when I feel, because a lot can go unsaid in a romantic relationship, and this is when passive aggressiveness can come out, and then like the fight about the dishes is never the fight about the dishes,
no, never,
right?
Yeah.
And so even when like I can sense, like, because we've been together for so long, like I can sense when his energy shifts like instantly. Like I'll just like even like put my hand on his shoulder. I'm like, hey, like what's up? Is everything okay? And even creating that safe space for him just to like open up and share what he's saying, thinking, feeling. Game changer.
What I would point out is that, one, you were both very willing participants, right? You were both very aware. You both wanted this to work. You were committed. And you were open to being wrong and moving into uncomfortable spaces. Like I know for you, probably even just sitting down and, as you said, having those conversations was really hard, but you were willing to do it. You're willing to go through the discomfort in order to get to another side. And I think also, you know, you can heal attachment systems and attachment dynamics indirectly by just bringing that awareness in, by just opening up that communication and really attuning to your partner. Yeah. And I see that even though I know you said that you only recently heard about, you know, attachment styles and just started learning about it, you were still doing it, right? You just didn't know.
That's like when there's a willingness to grow and a willingness to grow the relationship, you don't have to label it as something. It's
not
just,
at
that's
all.
what you're going to, but I can remember very clearly like a huge turning point for our relationship was, I don't even remember the exact situation, but it was something that came up, and like we had been on like really good solid ground, like big into growth work, like for a while. But the relationship had never taken like a really conscious focus. And there was something that happened that like shifted the energy in the house. I remember we had the kids at the time, and it was like a really like awkward evening, and we hadn't felt that energy with each other in a long time. And it was like one of those situations where like we're at dinner and we're having conversation with the kids, but like him and I are just like disconnected and like checked out, right? And I'm just like, oh no, like this is like not the way we're having this relationship. And I even like said that to him afterwards. I'm like, this feels very weird. And again, just like voicing, I'm like, I can feel the shift in the energy. Like this feels very weird. And the kids ended up going to bed, and we went down to the basement in our old house, which is like 3 floors down from their bedroom. And we sat up almost the whole night and just sat in the basement and talked. And there was periods of like, sometime like, oh my God, I'm going to cry just thinking about this, where there would be like 90 minutes, 2 hours where we sat there in silence and just like looked at each other. And I'm like, I don't know what to say. He's like, I don't know what to say either. And like you sit in those hard conversations, like you sit in those hard times, just to the willingness to work out. And it's more so like getting to understand that other person. Like, I want to understand you. I want to understand how you interpret things and like why you perceive it as that, or like why that really bothers you. And like that, like fight or conflict or like the resolution that we went through was game changer for like everything moving forward. Because like when you're willing to sit in the uncomfortable conversations, that's when like I saw that like he truly like loved me, and like that devotion to the relationship to like want to change.
Yeah. Because oftentimes it's not necessarily about the fight, it's that repair afterwards. And for too many couples, that repair doesn't happen, or it comes too late.
Yes.
So that the rift is bigger than what can be repaired.
Yes.
And if you just kind of keep going, it will just fall apart. So the fact that you guys were able to come together, and even though it took all night, that was the repair that needed to happen in order for you guys to move forward.
Mm-hmm. And it gives you a chance to break the patterns.
Break the patterns. That's
break the
huge.
patterns. Like that's my phase of dating right now. Just watching myself falling back into old patterns. And like, I deleted the app last week because I was like, yeah, no, I'm done, you know, and just falling back into, I'll just stay single for a while because it's safer. When you have that time, that safe space within you, within your relationship, within some friendships, you can just observe yourself and like, okay, old Claudia would do this.
Yeah.
Current Claudia is trying to break that pattern. It's not easy. I'm sitting in the shame sometimes and guilt and discomfort, but I'm doing it. And then what's on the other side of it, you know, like a next level within your relationship with Joe, or like, you know, another date maybe next week or whatever that's going to look like. But it's that time, that conscious awareness allows you to make a grounded decision and respond and not react. And that's where you break the patterns.
Yeah. And even speaking of like breaking patterns of like, so like, how do you break like even like in a relationship was to like turn the lens on myself in a hard conversation. And like my go-to is defense. I will defend myself. Like, nope, not me, blah, blah, blah. Is to like watch what my initial pattern is. Like I will catch myself defending now. Like as an example, Joe and I have actually, Greer and I and Joe have decided that we're going to put a pause on the podcast for a little while, and something we wanted to mention on this podcast.
Yeah. Hey, everyone, just by the way.
And
sorry.
So that was a hard conversation with Joe and I of just like, there's some other stuff that's coming up in the business that needs attention. My health hasn't been that great. My capacity has been low. And so just evaluating of like where time and energy is being spent. And during that conversation, I caught myself being defensive instantly, and I stopped myself from being defensive instantly. And then I was like looking at this from like a logical, rational perspective. And so when you can stop your own patterns like in action, like that's when change like really happens, because you literally change the dynamic of the conversation.
Well, what I hear both of you saying is that it's not just the conversations. It's not just identifying your thoughts. It's actually going out and doing the thing.
Yeah. That's
major green
right?
flag to look for is when actions match words, and words match actions.
You can read all the books, listen to all the podcasts,
but
go
like
to all the conferences, but like unless you're actually shifting.
Yeah, unless you're actually doing it.
And even like, I know it's hard, like when you're in a hard conversation, you know, with someone and like that energy gets flowing in a certain way, right? And like one of the tools that Joe and I have really grabbed onto, and it just works for us, is like one of us calls timeout. Like if you could just like, and that's breaking a pattern right there. Sometimes it's like, I've said something I didn't want to say, or a tone, or just like, you know, it happens when conversations sometimes get heated where we're just like, timeout. Like, can we just start this conversation over again? And it can create that neutral ground again to like show up the way you really want to show up. And it actually like makes you alert and conscious, and you actually get to choose something different.
Yeah, because when the emotions take over, it's a little harder to be aware, you know, and to stop the patterns.
Yeah.
Obviously I coach, you know, fitness and nutrition coaching. It's the same when I made so many analogies between my eating disorders that I had like 10-ish years ago when dating. It's like, when you're about to binge or when you're binging, you know, you're in it, you observe yourself, but if you're sucked into the emotions that led to the binge, it's really hard to put the bag of cookies away.
Yeah.
Like you're still going to eat the whole thing, right? Whereas if you're more aware, calm, grounded, you know, your nervous system is regulated, you can consciously choose to put the cookies away or like not get defensive or whatever the pattern is.
Yeah, I think it's like that difference between having emotions or the emotions having you.
And I think even, you know, we've talked about being in the observer seat. Like that is like step number one. Like you have to stay in that conscious awareness of like, this is how I'm acting, and like this is the tone of voice that's coming out of me, and these are my, you know, wounds showing up, and here's my attachment style being triggered. And it's cool to know all these different areas, which is why like growth and personal development and spiritual work is like so transformative for your life. But when you can stay in that observer seat as much as possible, then you're able to like grab your tool belt of like, okay, like what am I going to use here in order to help me out of this pattern?
Exactly. And what helped me now really loving to be in that observer seat is to be in that observer seat almost like laughing at myself and not making a big deal when I would see some patterns come back, right? So instead of being so critical and like, I'm not being perfect and like, what are you doing? You know, going back to like this pattern that you thought was healed and forever gone. And then like 6 months later, you're still back in it and just, you know, being super harsh on myself. I would just almost like have the conversation in my head, but like with a smile, like, look at you, Claudia. You're still people pleasing, you know? Yeah. You're still, you know, texting this person. Okay, cool. Like neutral ground, you know, with a lot of love, which is so much more helpful than to like get out of the pattern or just keep being aware than if you're harder on yourself and just
shaming
yourself
how
and dare you
like you mess
be
up
triggered again.
Okay, so you fall back into an old pattern, and then you're just gonna throw in some shame and some judgment and some self-hatred, and then you're gonna stay in that state for as long as you need to feel like you've suffered enough. And then you're gonna go back out, you're going to recommit to, okay, I'm not going to fall in that pattern, and you're going to keep going. But would it not be easier to fall into the pattern, catch yourself, and then just get right back on track and skip all of that unnecessary, wallowing in self-pity?
And not only that, like what I remind myself as well is like being in that energy does not serve me.
Not
if
at
I
all.
want to attract a partner that matches with the frequency that I would love to be in a relationship, when I'm like in self-pity and like shame and like guilt and like bashing myself because I was triggered or like my wound, got hit, I'm not in the energy I want to be in to attract that relationship. And that's why I deleted the app a week ago, because I was like, I just could see myself just going through the motion. And I was like, this is not the energy I want to project. Because now I'm just saying to the universe, like, it's a habit now to go on the app and, like, I don't even want to match with anybody. Like, no, I don't want to be in that state, right? So, because it's not serving me, and I'm not going to attract that conscious relationship. So
I just love how intentional you're being about all of it.
I mean, I'm still single, but
well, I'm same, but you're doing it. You're doing
it. Peter is on his way.
Oh, Peter. Do you know the Peter story, Greer?
Isn't he like your ideal man, and you just kind of named him Peter?
Oh, yeah. That was in the mastermind like 3 years ago, I think.
2020?
Oh, that was a while ago.
It was when Claudia was part of our mastermind, and love has been a topic of conversation many times, and I don't know who or where it came from.
I think it was Jody.
Jody? Yeah. One of our
She's
other...
like, we'll just name him Peter. So Peter is this fictional... future husband,
the placeholder,
yeah. So every mastermind, so we would meet in person every 3 months. That would be like the kind of the running gag, right? Like, so Claudia, like, give us an update on business, and like, did you meet Peter?
Did you meet Peter yet?
So Peter, if you're listening,
but your name doesn't have to be Peter.
Every Peter listening, that's gonna be like, it's me.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful, ladies. Thank you. This
was great.
Yeah,
this felt like soul therapy.
You like literally just landed here from driving, and I was like, no one talk. We're going to turn the mics on.
We have to save our conversations so we can use them as content.
And like I said, like it's not an area of my life that I talk about for many reasons. But yeah, it's been fun to dive in, and that's another intention. I was like, I don't want to make a big deal out of this when I started dating, because that too, like, talk about like childhood, programming, and like for me, like nobody would know that I had like a crush on a guy, in high school, or that I made out with this guy at the club. Like for me, it was like I wasn't perfect. So I would never say out loud like anything about if I was seeing someone, dating someone, sleeping with someone, or it was always like very secret in my life. And I'm just starting now to open up about it a little bit. And I was like, oh yeah, Claudia's dating this summer. Like it's not a big deal. And I can talk about dates that I went on, at the dinner table with my family, and I'm allowed, and it's really not a big deal. But that was also something that was holding me back a few years ago. So I feel like this is like coming out, today, chatting about.
I think it's mine too. I'm pretty sure my entire family is just waiting for me to adopt another cat. Call it a day. Like,
Miles would love a sibling.
I don't think he would, actually. Miles is an only child.
Oh, thank you, ladies. Our conversations are always so nourishing.
Thank you for having.
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Well, and thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.